I will be brief. I'm a high school mathematics teacher. My son was in his first year and had become popular among his classmates. He was doing well in my classes and so were his classmates. One day, I asked my son to send a message to his mother about something since I couldn't find my phone, but he was too lazy to do it and asked me to do it myself. I saw that he had a WhatsApp group called Exam Answers. Of course, I had to check it out. My son was sending the answers to his classmates for my exams. I had a notebook where I wrote down the answers and my son discovered it and took photos of them without me realizing it. I was very disappointed, so I decided to teach him a lesson. I wrote down all the answers incorrectly. If the students really paid a little attention, they would realize that they were terribly wrong. But even so, in the next exam, everyone used the wrong answers. At home, I ended up telling my son that I discovered what he was doing and I did it to teach him a lesson. Of course, I punished him and he and his classmates had to take summer classes since I gave them a surprise exam and they were significantly behind. That was last year and now they're in second year. I'm no longer their teacher, but now I'm worried. After that, all his friends stopped talking to him and they all called him a cheater who made them fail on purpose. Now also in the hallways, they call him an idiot who must copy in class to pass and constantly call the teacher's attention during exams by saying that my son is cheating, just to annoy him. I know that my son no longer cheats after last year's reprimand. I've been very strict with him regarding his studies, but now he has a very cold relationship with me. He's never directly blamed me, but I found out all this recently when a colleague told me how worried she was about my son. I talked to him about this and he said, "It's not my problem." We held a parent meeting to try to solve this, but I still don't know how to avoid the bullying. I had good intentions, but I think I didn't measure the repercussions he could have on the school. Any advice? Edit, my son is currently a young teen. Not the idiot. Finding out the scope of the cheating was important. To the school, to students who weren't cheating, and to make sure students who somehow made bad and unethical choices got the chance to catch up with their studies. Also, it sounds like he has no friends and is giving out the answers to make himself more popular. Ask him if he wants to move to a different school, as this will just be brought up forever, and he's the one who made everyone fail a test. Well, everyone's the idiot, your kid for obvious reasons, but oh man, OP, I have some words for you. Dude, you're a teacher. You should have taken a class in child psychology. You should know that public humiliation is a cruel and unacceptable punishment. Teens will push boundaries and mess up. Then you, as a parent, step in and enforce consequences and bring them back to the correct path. But publicly humiliating him to the point of being entirely socially ostracized by his peers is horrid on your part. It feels incredibly cruel and malicious. I'm going against the grain and saying you are the idiot. Yes, he needs to learn a lesson, but completely making him a pariah in the process was a bad idea. Since you were their teacher, you could have made a different test. Tell the students ahead of time that there'd been a rumor about answers being leaked and you made a new test. They would have scored according to what they knew and probably not passed if they hadn't studied. They still would have had to take summer classes, but your son would still have a social life. Update, I don't know if this counts as publicly humiliating him. I changed the answers in my notebook, which I knew I would give to his classmates, and when they all failed, they themselves told me that it was my son who gave them those answers. Trying to get rid of the blame at home, I told my son that I already knew that. My wife agrees with you all and says that I should have handled things differently. I'm going to talk to him and we will start the process of changing his schools. He'll be a little further away, but it seems like the best option. I will also make an appointment with a therapist, family and for him, although he's told me that he doesn't need it. My parents love all their kids. They have a soft spot for my somewhat useless brother. He can't win. He's almost 30 and he's never had a steady job. Just a series of Joe jobs. Wearing a name tag and a hat. Whenever I buy myself a new car, I give my old one to my parents. I could trade them in, but I can afford to help my parents out. My cars are usually 6 years old and maybe have 30,000 miles. I rarely drive. The last car I gave them was a Jeep Patriot. It was loaded. I could have traded it in for $9,000. Instead, I sold it to my dad for $1. He had it for 6 months before he gave it to my brother. My brother sold it for $12,000. I could have done that. My whole idea was for my parents to have a good car with no maintenance issues. I just got a new Bronco, so I talked to my parents. I said that I would only give them the Ram if we had a contract stating that if they sold it in the next 5 years, they had to sell it back to me for $1. They said I was treating them like children and that once it was their truck they could do whatever they wanted. I agreed that was fair, I sold my truck privately and got $27,000 for it. I used that as part of my purchase of my new Bronco. My dad saw my new vehicle and asked when I would drop off the truck. I told him I sold it. He and my mom are upset because they're now driving a 12-year-old piece of crap. That's not really my problem. I tried to help them, but it wasn't good enough for them. My parents think I went back on my word. I never promised them anything. I only ever offer them a deal. Your parents are taking you for granted. You owe them nothing. It's crazy that they can do whatever they want with it, but you shouldn't do what you want with it. That's nuts. It doesn't even make sense. Of course you're not the idiot. They should realize how lucky they've been. Maybe they will now. They messed around and found out. Surely they're not so dense they can't actually see the issue. They can make an argument like they did, but I find it hard to believe they're being honest at that moment and don't understand the actual issue. Since they don't want to be treated as children, they can buy their own cars. That's what adults do. Why did they not keep it and gift the bro their car? Bro wanted money, not a car, and the parents don't mind offending OP to give bro what he wants. Good for you, OP. Your parents can sulk all they want. They didn't accept your terms. Fine. You didn't accept theirs. You didn't promise them anything. To suggest it was owed to them sounds very entitled to me. Were you the scapegoat growing up? But you sure have some choosing beggar parents. Good for you for shutting down the gravy train. My female 48 husband, 46, and I have a 20-year-old daughter, Ellie, who is currently on vacation from college. About 5 months ago, Ellie told us she had a new boyfriend, who I'll call Tom. This came rather out of the blue as Ellie hadn't mentioned seeing anyone or that she was dating, but both my husband and I were supportive and happy for her. However, Ellie was strangely secretive about the whole situation. Usually she's an open book, especially with me, and always shares details of her personal life. On this occasion, she didn't show any pictures and we knew next to no information about Tom other than they met at a party through a mutual friend. Ellie spent the past month of her vacation in her college town, and the plan was always for her to return this weekend. Ellie asked if she could bring Tom with her for a few days of the trip as they were getting serious and she wanted him to meet us. Although we mentioned that we barely knew anything about him, Ellie said it would be a surprise and that we'd love him. Given he's clearly an important part of our daughter's life, we agreed and said we'd look forward to spending the weekend together. Yesterday morning we went to pick up Ellie and Tom from the airport to drive them to our place and we were shocked. We knew instantly that Tom was much older than Ellie and certainly wasn't a college student. I was just in a state of surprise but didn't want to cause a scene and told my husband to do the same. We drove home, but it was a frosty journey which Ellie commented on. When we arrived, my husband point-blank asked Tom how old he was. Tom said he was 44. I was immediately disgusted. He's only 2 years younger than my husband and old enough to be Ellie's father. My husband continued to interrogate him, asking how they met and the whole background. Ellie explained that it was at a party and Tom was there because he was well known around the town. They realised they had a lot in common and hit it off from there. I really didn't want to hear anymore and my husband told Tom to leave. Ellie shouted and said how unfair this was, that we hadn't even given Tom a chance and that he made her happy. Tom could sense the tension, so left and Ellie followed behind him. I texted Ellie to tell her we'd love to see her and to come over to discuss the situation. She asked if Tom was welcome and I said he wasn't. Therefore, after labelling me a judgmental idiot, she told me she wasn't coming and that they would be staying at a local hotel and catching up with friends. I feel terrible about the whole situation and don't want to lose my daughter over it. My husband isn't budging and says he'd have to be held back if he ever saw that man again. Am I the idiot for saying he isn't welcome, or have I done the right thing? LOL, Tom sensed the tension. What part of get out of my house did he not understand? I was your daughter once, nearly the same age gap as the guy I was dating. The absolute best thing my parents did was keep the lines of communication open between us because as the guy started to systematically cut me off from all the other people in my life, when I finally went to cut bait, it was my parents who stepped out to catch me. Play the long game here. The best story I've heard is that the dad befriended the guy. They talked about stuff relevant to their age group, did dad-age stuff together, talked about things like insurance, retirement and house payments, went out to eat at boring grown-up places instead of sports bars, and generally acted like middle-aged men. She realised she was basically dating her father. They had almost nothing in common, and they broke up. This is the way. I had a similar, and my foster dad was what I believed was amazingly chill about me dating a guy in his mid-30s when I was 19. I spoke to him over a decade later and he said he wanted to deck the guy but knew if he pushed me, then I'd dig my heels in and the relationship would go on far longer. Instead, he asked me to check in so he knew where I was and when I'd be back to make sure I was safe. However, he did other things to gently highlight the inequality of the relationship. For example, he'd make sure to say how nice I looked every time I left the house. The boyfriend would send me back to the house for not wearing makeup or the right clothes. It didn't take too long for me to put two and two together and realize the boyfriend was a control freak who wanted a trophy girlfriend. My ex destroyed my life 7 years ago. He was cheating on me with multiple women. He allowed one of the women in question to steal from us, which set not only him but me back because it was a substantial amount she got her hands on. And to this day, the woman is unknown because she gave fake details. We divorced as a result, and one of his affair partners during the divorce admitted she was pregnant. From what I now know, the baby was concealed after I filed for divorce, but the mother was someone in his life while we were married. Ex and I shared 2 children, our son and daughter are twins. He passed away suddenly about 8 months ago. He was the sole parent of his daughter, who's currently a young grammar schooler. Her mother didn't want to be in her life. Her mother's family was also not in her life. After my ex died, his daughter was taken into foster care. She's remained in foster care. I was contacted earlier in the process and asked if I would foster her and raise her with my children. I said no. That was the end. My ex's sister got in touch with me a month ago. For the first time in years, we communicated. Even at my ex's funeral, no words were exchanged, and we have bad blood. Despite knowing he was sleeping around, she expected me to stay with her brother for our children. I didn't like that. She felt like I ruined my ex's life by leaving. She told me as much. He gave me an STI that I didn't know I had until I went to get checked after finding out about his affairs. Ex's sister told me her niece deserved a parent, deserved a family, and I should keep her with her siblings, and she told me to cut the half BS. She knew that the reason my kids called her a half-sibling was because of me. I can undo all the bad things I did and make things work so that all 3 kids have a happy home. She repeated over and over again that she felt her niece deserved this, and how she's in foster family 5 already and no family has come forward to take her. I ignored her and ended the call without saying anything. But she didn't give up and called me again a week ago from a new number. I blocked her old one, and she was repeating the same crap. I told her she could give her niece a parent if she wanted, but it would never be me. I told her she should want better for her niece than someone who could never love her or want her. This caused a hysterical reaction. But she told me I'm a heartless witch who feels okay separating siblings. Am I the idiot? Why are you taking any of these calls from someone you've had no relationship with for years? Who these days even answers a voice call from an unknown number? Not the idiot. You already made the decision not to take your kid's half-sibling, and it was a no. Now stop interacting with your ex-sister-in-law just for the opportunity to get your last digs in about your garbage ex-spouse and this garbage situation. The sad thing here is that there are a lot of kids in this world that no one wants to parent. So why doesn't the sister-in-law ever adopt any children? She won't adopt her own niece but expects you to step up for some child not even related to you. I know the child is a half-sibling for your children, but you aren't related by blood to the child. What happened to her niece is tragic, but just like she can't take care of her, you can't either. Simple logic. Why is she expecting someone to do something she doesn't want to do? And your ex must have bad-mouthed you to his daughter, and I bet the sister-in-law, the drama queen, has also done so. So it's not like you can start from square one. Block the sister-in-law and move on in your life. My wife has a book club that meets every Sunday at her friend's home. It's supposed to be a lunch thing, and she always tells me that she'll be home around 3. Every single time she's been late. The worst was getting home at 7 p.m. They went on a shopping outing. I've talked to her multiple times and I've expressed that it's disrespectful. I'm fine watching the kids, pre-tween and tween. I'm not fine with her lying to me about when she will get home. It also just makes my life harder since she usually doesn't get home in time for me to hang out with my own friends, so I have to cancel. We both work and the kids are in school. I'm an active parent. I don't have a schedule to get out of the home time like my wife does. So yesterday, I made it very clear that she needs to be home before 4 at the latest because my uncle is in town and we're supposed to grab dinner before he heads back to his home state. Well, she told me she'd be home at 3 and at 3:45 she wasn't home. I drove to her friend's house with the kids. When her friend opened the door, it was around 4:15 now, my wife was there and I handed off the kids to her. I told her I was going to meet my uncle and didn't answer any calls during dinner. I got home and we had a huge argument. She thinks I'm a huge jerk for humiliating her in front of her friends. I told her this wouldn't have happened if she'd arrived on time. Am I the idiot for going to my wife's book club and giving her the kids? Edit, I called, no response. Not the idiot, she backed you into a corner. She's the one who brought humiliation onto herself by disregarding your needs and going back on her word. You shouldn't have had to sacrifice time with your uncle. Nothing would have been solved by you sitting home one more time stewing and trying to talk to her about it again later. That wasn't working, and repeating the cycle wouldn't end differently this time. Yeah, it's bad enough to be 4 hours late, as she's been in the past, but to be late when you know your spouse has somewhere to be, and you promise to be on time, and then mute or ignore your phone? Unacceptable. What kind of reasoning did she give OP for this nonsense? Assuming she bothered in between bouts of blaming him for embarrassing her. My only quibble is with the children. It can't have been fun for them, and it's not okay to traumatize them like that. I was almost relieved he found her at the actual book club. With time gaps like that, I was starting to think she might be engaged in an affair. OP, my mom did this to my dad when they first got married and had kids. Dad had his hangout time and my mom had hers. She was tired of being late to hers because Dad didn't want to leave the bar. So she loaded up my sister and brother and walked into the bar and handed my dad my toddler sister and baby brother and told him if he was ever late again to expect a divorce because her time was just as valuable as his. He was never late again, and they just celebrated 47 years of marriage last month. Also, for those worried about the kids, it's not traumatizing to go for a car ride and be dropped off with the other parent. It doesn't sound like they had to witness a huge argument or anything.